Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive. We're gonna hit reverse today.
Hit reverse.
Yeah, hit reverse. It's this really cool book
Okay.
by Jash Dholani, called Hit Reverse: New Ideas from Old Books.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it came out pretty recently, December 8th, actually, just last month.
Oh,
And Dholani argues that the best solutions to modern problems, well, we might be able to find them by looking back at old wisdom.
I like that. So looking to the past to solve present problems.
Oh, exactly. And it's kind of we're always obsessed with the new, right? Like the next big thing,
Right.
the newest life hack or whatever.
Absolutely. Always looking for that quick fix.
And Delani's kind of saying maybe we've forgotten about the endearing power of timeless wisdom.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think about all the wisdom out there, and we're so focused on the new stuff, we don't even bother looking back.
Totally. And he uses all kinds of sources,
What kind of sources?
like Stoic philosophy, Eastern spirituality, even classic lit.
Wow. That's a pretty diverse range.
Yeah. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed
Oh, yeah.
by today's world, this deep dive is for you.
I like it.
Okay, so Tolani's basic argument is that human nature hasn't really changed that much, even though the world around us obviously has.
Yeah, I mean, we're still grappling with a lot of the same questions.
Right. So the fundamental questions haven't changed.
Nope.
And so old wisdom could actually be applied to modern challenges.
I mean, think about it. For centuries, people have been dealing with things like love, loss, fear, ambition. We're just facing them in a different context.
Totally. It's just presented in a different way, different package.
Exactly.
And so instead of always looking ahead,
Yeah.
we should maybe hit reverse and see what insights we can get from the past.
Like reverse engineering wisdom. I love it.
Right. And so the book itself, it's structured by theme.
Right.
So each section unpacks an old idea and then its relevance for us today.
I see. So he takes these old ideas and then sort of updates them for a modern audience.
Yeah. And one that I thought was super interesting was
Which one?
was his exploration of Stoicism.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, Stoicism is having a bit of a moment right now.
Right. It's everywhere.
It is.
But
Yeah.
for managing modern anxiety.
Using ancient philosophy to tackle modern day stress. That's a cool concept.
Yeah. So he talks about this thing called negative visualization.
Okay, I've heard of that. What's that again?
So it's basically you imagine losing something you really value.
Well, like your job?
Yeah.
Your health?
Your house. Whatever.
It sounds a little bit dark, though.
I know, right? It gets a little dark. But I think I see where he's going with this.
Yeah, I think I do, too. It's about appreciating what you have while you have it.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a little uncomfortable to think about those things.
Right.
But it's also a way to be grateful for what you have right now. Kind of puts things in perspective.
Right. It's like a way to shift your perspective.
Yeah. And even when life feels super stressful.
You can still be grateful. You can still appreciate what you have.
Absolutely. You can find those little things to be thankful for.
And that ties into another old idea that he explores.
Oh.
This Buddhist idea of impermanence.
Oh.
Now, I know that sounds a little out there.
Yeah, a little abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even apply that to your life?
Well, stick with me on this one.
Okay. I'm listening. So Dholani argues that understanding that everything changes, our possessions, our emotions, even our successes and failures.
Oh, yeah. Nothing stays the same forever.
Right. It's all temporary. Can be really liberating.
I could see that. If you're going through a rough patch, knowing that it won't last forever can be really helpful.
Yeah. Knowing that even the bad times are going to pass can make those challenges feel a little less overwhelming.
Absolutely. It's like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Totally. And it's interesting how Dholani kind of bridges those two things.
What two things?
Eastern and Western philosophy.
Oh, yeah. He's taking these ancient ideas and making them relevant for a modern audience.
Exactly. He takes these complex concepts like impermanence and translates them into terms that a Western audience can relate to.
Yeah, he's really good at that, weaving together all these different ideas from different cultures and time periods.
Right. He's making this tapestry of wisdom.
I like that. A tapestry of wisdom.
That feels both ancient and also relevant to today's world.
Very cool. So it's not just philosophy, though, right? You said he uses other things.
Yeah. So he doesn't just rely on philosophical concepts.
Okay.
He also uses examples from classic literature.
Oh, interesting. Like, how so?
So, like, for example, he analyzes Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, I love that book.
Me too.
Mm.
But he's not just looking at it as a romance novel. He's
Yeah.
also looking at it as, like, a study of social dynamics
I see.
and, like, the consequences of hasty judgments.
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
Right. And so it's like he's challenging us to, like, look beyond the surface of these, like, familiar stories and kind of extract, like, timeless lessons.
About human nature, relationships, all that good stuff.
Yeah, like lessons about, like, human behavior, relationships, all that.
I'm really intrigued by this book.
Yeah, me too. It's been really thought-provoking so far. Oh, and speaking of thought-provoking, he also talks about the power of reflection.
Oh, yeah, like taking time to think things through.
Exactly. He argues that in our world, like, we're hyper-connected, right?
Yeah, always on, always plugged in.
Always on. We've lost the art of slowing down.
It's true. We're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation.
And, like, really contemplating our lives, like, actually reflecting.
And that can be exhausting. Like, you never really get a chance to just stop and breathe.
Yeah. It's like there's no time for introspection.
Yeah.
And that can lead to, like, feeling disconnected.
Disconnected.
From ourselves.
Right.
And the world around us.
I mean, that makes sense. If you're always focused on the external, you never have time to connect with your inner self.
Right. And he's not saying, like, go live in a cave.
Right.
And, like, completely disconnect from technology.
He's just saying we need to find more balance.
Right. Just, like, carve out time for stillness,
Mm-hmm.
reflection.
Yeah, like be more intentional with our time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also saying that, like, reflection isn't just about, like, dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
It's about being present.
Yeah. It's about
Yeah,
getting
fair.
clarity, perspective,
Yeah,
and understanding in, like, the present moment.
absolutely. It's about taking a step back from the chaos and just being.
Right. And he actually argues that this type of introspection can spark creativity.
Oh, wow. So taking time to reflect can actually make you more creative.
Yeah. And lead to new solutions for the problems we face.
I like that. So it's not just about personal growth, but also about problem solving.
Exactly. So it's not just about looking back. It's about using the past
Okay.
to inform the present
Mm-hmm.
and shape the future.
I'm curious, though. I mean, I find this really interesting, but I do wonder how practical some of these old ideas really are.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I find it really interesting intellectually, but I'm also kind of like, how do you actually put this into practice?
Right. Like, it's one thing to talk about these concepts, but how do you actually apply them to your everyday life?
Exactly. Like, he gives us all these ideas, but it's like, oh, how do I use this?
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear more about the practical applications of these old ideas.
Me too. And that's something we can definitely explore further. Okay, so we were talking about how Dholani could have maybe given us some more, like, concrete example.
Yeah, like some more practical advice.
Right, like how to actually use these old ideas in our lives.
Yeah, because it's one thing to, like, understand them intellectually, but it's another to, like, actually apply them.
Totally. And I think one area where that would have been really helpful is in his discussion of, like, Eastern philosophy.
Okay.
He brings up all these really cool concepts,
Like what?
like mindfulness, balance.
Yeah, those are good ones.
But I think, like, a lot of people are probably reading it and they're like, okay, how do I actually do that?
Right. Like, it's one thing to, like, read about mindfulness.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to actually be mindful.
Exactly. So, like, what are some, like, tangible steps that someone could take to, like, actually integrate this old idea into their modern life?
Well, he does mention meditation,
Yeah.
which obviously has, like, roots in various Eastern traditions.
Right.
But, like, he could have gone a little deeper.
Yeah, like how?
Like, maybe talked about, like, the different types of meditation.
Okay.
And, like, given some basic guidance for, like, beginners. Like, for example, he could have said something like, start with, like, 5 minutes a day. Just focus on your breath.
Oh, I like that.
And, like, gradually increase the duration as you get more comfortable.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Like, baby steps.
Exactly. Just ease into it.
He could have even, like, recommended some resources.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like, guided meditation apps. Or, like, local meditation groups.
That would be great.
Right. That would make it a lot more...
Practical.
Yeah. accessible.
Adaptable.
Yeah. And I think another example where he could have like gone deeper into that practical application stuff is with Stoicism.
Okay, yeah,
He
Stoicism.
talks about like the importance of focusing on what we can control.
Right, like that's a big part of Stoicism.
Yeah, it's like a key tenet of Stoic philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how do we actually figure out what we can control?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hmm.
Like in a world where it feels like so much is out of our control.
Totally. Like it's easy to get caught up in like worrying about things we can't change.
Right, like the weather.
Traffic.
Yeah, or like other people's opinions.
So how do we apply that Stoic principle to like these everyday frustrations? Right. Like how can we not stress about the things we can't control?
I think he could have introduced this idea
Mm.
called the dichotomy of control,
Okay.
which is like a very Stoic thing.
And what is that?
Basically, like you categorize things as either within your control or outside of your control.
Okay.
So, like your thoughts, actions, responses, those are within your control.
Okay.
But like external events, other people's behavior, those are not.
Oh, so like if I'm stuck in traffic,
Yes,
I can't control the traffic,
exactly.
but I can control how I react.
Yes, you got it.
I see. So like instead of getting all frustrated and angry, I can like listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
Catch up on phone calls or like, I don't know, just like breathe.
Exactly. It's about shifting your focus.
Yeah. And so by like consciously focusing on what we can control, we can like empower ourselves.
Yeah. To like respond to difficult situations in a more
positive way.
Yeah. Positive, resilient way.
And like not get swept away by our emotions.
Exactly. It's about being the captain of your own ship, so to speak.
Totally. So it's like a mental shift, reframing our perspective.
Yeah.
To focus on what we can control.
Yeah, exactly. It's a powerful way to approach life's challenges.
And I think like he could have given us more like concrete examples of this too.
Oh yeah, like how to apply it in specific situations.
Yeah, like how to deal with a difficult coworker or like how to handle a stressful work deadline.
Right. Those are great examples.
Yeah, so he could have been like, okay, imagine you have a tight deadline.
Yeah.
And you're feeling overwhelmed. What do you do?
Break it down into smaller steps.
Exactly. And like focus on completing like one step at a time.
Yeah, that makes it less overwhelming.
Right. And that also aligns with the Stoic principle of like focusing on the present moment.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Right. So it's about taking these like abstract philosophical concepts and like grounding them in real life.
Yeah, like making them relatable.
Yeah. Like in situations that the listener can actually relate to.
Totally. He could have even included like worksheets or exercises.
Oh, yeah. That would be cool.
To help people figure out their own areas of control.
Yeah.
And develop their own strategies for applying Stoic principles.
Now, while we're focusing on like how Dholani could have made the book more practical, we should acknowledge that he does have some good stuff.
Yeah, like what?
About like using old ideas to spark creativity and innovation.
Yeah, that was a good part of the book.
And like, I think that's actually where Dholani really shines.
He's like, you could look to the past for inspiration. Not just for like your own personal life, but for like...
for problem solving.
Yeah, problem solving in any field.
Right. It's like that saying, what is it? There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we can't find new ways to combine old ideas.
Right. Or like apply them in like new contexts.
Exactly. It's about thinking outside the box.
And Dholani gives a bunch of examples of how like this hitting reverse thing has led to breakthroughs.
Oh, yeah.
Like in different industries.
So like, for example, he talks about how architects have been inspired by like ancient building techniques to design more sustainable buildings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And like energy efficient structures.
It's like using the wisdom of the past to build a better future.
Exactly. And I remember reading about how some architects are like studying Roman aqueducts.
Oh, wow.
And like trying to use those principles to design modern irrigation systems.
That's fascinating.
Right. Oh. Like it's so cool how these ancient ideas can still be relevant and like groundbreaking today.
Totally. It shows you that innovation isn't always about inventing something completely new.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about like reimagining old ideas.
Adapting existing knowledge.
To meet current challenges. And I think that's a really empowering message.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like you don't have to be a genius to be innovative.
Right. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. And you can just look to the past, see what's already been done, and find a way to make it work for you.
You know, like build on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly. And so I think that's a key takeaway from this deep dive.
Okay, what is it?
It's that we should recognize the value of these old ideas, not just for like personal growth, but also for like driving progress and like finding solutions to problems.
Yeah. It's about using the past to shape the future.
Exactly. And now before we wrap up this section, I wanted to touch on like some of the critiques and limitations of the book.
Okay, yeah. Good.
Like, obviously no book is perfect.
Of course not.
But even though we both really liked the book and we found a lot to admire, there are some things that could have been
better.
Yeah, better.
Okay. Like what?
So one thing is like, even though he covers a wide range of old ideas, he doesn't always go super deep.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Like into the nuances and complexities of each one.
He kind of skims the surface a bit sometimes.
Yeah, and there are times when I was reading and I was like, I wish he would have gone deeper into this.
Yeah, like what kind of things?
Well, like for example, when he's talking about Stoicism.
Stoicism, okay.
He focuses mostly on like the benefits of resilience and self-control.
Okay.
Which are obviously good things.
Right, those are definitely good qualities to have.
But I think it's also important to acknowledge that like, if you take those things too far, it could be a bad thing.
Like, what do you mean?
Like, you could end up suppressing your emotions or, like, not asking for help when you need it.
Right. It's all about balance.
Exactly. Like, even good concepts can be taken too far.
And I think Dholani could have maybe explored those limitations a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, maybe by presenting some counter-arguments.
Okay.
Or, like, contrasting perspectives.
Yeah, to kind of give a more well-rounded view.
Exactly. Show both sides of the coin.
Another thing I thought was missing was, like, more historical context.
Oh, yeah, like where these ideas came from.
Yeah. Like, he mentions the origins of some of these old ideas, but I would like more detail.
Yeah, I agree. Like a deeper dive into their historical and cultural significance.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, like, understanding the context in which these ideas emerged can, like, give you a better understanding of how they've evolved.
Totally. Like how they've been interpreted and applied over time.
Exactly. So, like, for instance, when he talks about Eastern philosophy.
Eastern philosophy, okay.
It would have been really helpful if he had given us more background on, like, specific schools of thought.
Oh, yeah, like Zen Buddhism.
Yeah. Zen Buddhism, Taoism, all of that.
Yeah, that would add a lot of depth.
Yeah. And it would help us understand the nuances of each tradition.
Right. Because it's not just one big monolithic thing.
Exactly. Like, there are all these different schools of thought within Eastern philosophy.
And they each have their own unique perspective.
So it's like, he kind of gives us the destination, but he doesn't give us the map to get there.
I like that analogy, the map and the destination.
Right. Like, it would have been nice to have a little more guidance along the way.
Yeah, to help us navigate the complexities of these ideas.
But even with those, like, observations, I think it's important to say that we both really enjoyed the book.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great read.
Dholani's really good at connecting these, like, seemingly disparate ideas.
Yeah, he's like a master weaver.
Right. And presenting them in a way that's, like, clear and engaging.
And he's definitely started a conversation.
Yeah. About the importance of these old ideas.
In our modern world.
And that's ultimately what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Right, absolutely. It's a reminder that the past has a lot to offer us.
Yeah. It's an invitation to, like, step outside of the whole, like, obsession with the new.
The next big thing.
Yeah. And, like, rediscover all this wisdom that's been around for centuries.
Like tapping into this ancient well of knowledge.
Yeah. And using it to, like, guide us in the present.
And inspire us for the future.
Exactly. Okay, so we were talking about some of the things that maybe Dholani could have done a little better.
Yeah, like some of the limitations of the book.
Right. And one thing that kind of stood out to me was that, like, he doesn't really acknowledge the potential downsides.
Downsides of what?
Of, like, applying some of these old ideas in, like, certain situations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, he's very focused on the positive aspect.
Yeah. Like, for example, with Stoicism.
Stoicism, okay.
He talks a lot about resilience and self-control.
Right. Like, those are the big takeaways from Stoicism.
Yeah. And those are good things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But, like, I think we also need to recognize that if you take them too far, it can be a bad thing.
Yeah, like how so?
Well, like, imagine you're going through something really tough.
Okay.
And you're just like, I'm going to be stoic about this. I'm not going to let it get to me. But, like, what if you actually need help?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, sometimes you need to reach out to others.
Right. Like sometimes you need to let yourself feel those emotions.
And not just try to suppress them.
Exactly. And I think Dholani could have addressed that a little bit more.
Yeah, like acknowledge that there's a balance.
Yeah. Like even with good things, you got to be careful not to take them too far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything in moderation.
Another thing I was thinking about was that he could have given us more historical background.
Oh, yeah. More context.
Yeah. Like, he mentions where some of these old ideas came from, but I would have loved to know more about, like...
their history.
Yeah, their history, like the cultural significance.
Right. Because, like, understanding the context in which these ideas emerged can help you understand the ideas themselves.
Exactly. Like, for example, when he talks about Eastern philosophy, it would have been helpful if he had, like, talked more about the different schools of thought.
Oh, yeah, like Zen Buddhism.
Yeah, or Taoism.
Confucianism.
Right, like all the different branches of Eastern philosophy.
Because they each have their own unique perspective.
Exactly. And so I think that would have added, like, a lot of depth.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice to have that extra layer of information.
But even with those things that I mentioned, I still think it's a really good book.
Oh, yeah, me too. I really enjoyed it.
And I think Dholani does a really good job of, like, connecting all these different ideas.
Yeah, he's really good at weaving together these different threads of thought.
And presenting them in a way that's, like, easy to understand.
Yeah, he makes it really accessible.
Yeah, and, like, engaging. So, like, even if there are some things that he could have maybe done better, I think he's achieved his goal. Which was to, like, start a conversation.
Yeah, get people thinking about these old ideas.
Right, about, like, the relevance of old wisdom for today's world.
And I think he's done that really effectively.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a really interesting conversation.
It's like an invitation to, like, step back from the constant chase for the new.
The next big thing.
Yeah, and, like, see what we can learn from the past.
Yeah, like rediscovering those timeless truths that have always been there.
Exactly. And maybe even using those old ideas to help us solve some of the problems that we face today.
I like that. Using the past to shape the future.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Hit Reverse,
yeah,
we want to leave you with a question.
Okay. Hit us with it.
What old idea from the book really stood out to you?
Yeah, like what resonated with you the most?
And how can you hit reverse on that idea?
To make your life better, to solve a problem, or just to, like, gain a new perspective.
So we encourage you to, like, explore these ideas.
Yeah, do your own deep dive.
Think about how they apply to your own life. And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll uncover something that can really change your perspective.
And help you navigate this crazy world we live in.
Thanks for joining us.